everybody, welcome back. So today I'm going over all the books that I finished this week. This is my wrap up for the week of August 22nd. For my treat this week I made banana pie cupcakes because cupcakes go great with books. So this week I finished 7 books again. I don't know that I planned that, but it's what happened. So the first book, let's go over the ones that I finished. The first book was called Senlin Ascends by Josiah Baincraft. And this is the book 1 in the Books of Babel series. This is a fantasy about a guy who goes to this city on his honeymoon and his wife disappears. And he believes she's gone into this, they call the Tower of Babel, which is this huge tower where there seems to be like a city on every level. And there's something like 30 levels or something. And he believes that she's gotten into this tower and that perhaps she's been kidnapped. He doesn't know, so he's going after her. This book was really interesting. Every level in the tower seems to have like a different city and a different like kind of theme going on. And as you're learning, kind of learn a little bit more about the tower and what it's about. And it seems like we'll just say everyone in the world is drawn to this tower. And it's not as great as everyone thinks it is. And Senlin is finding like all the corruption and everything that's in it. So it was really interesting. Senlin isn't like someone I would consider like the typical hero of a story. He's a scholar. He's not a fighter. The next book that I finished was called They Cage the Animals at Night by Michael Jennings Burch. And this is a true story memoir about a foster orphanage type situation that's going on in New York in the 1950s. The main character, Jennings, was his first name. He added Michael later, but his given name was Jennings. And he added Michael later because people kept assuming that Jennings was his last name, and he got sick of it. Basically, his mom got sick, and it's hard to say whether it was like mental illness or whether it was she was physically ill. He did have a brother that was sick all the time and was actually hospitalized most of his life. And so, but for whatever reason, she's unable to take care of him and his siblings anymore. And so she sends him to an orphanage and sends the other boys other places. And he's there for a while. He goes to a foster home. That doesn't work out. He's back at the orphanage. He's back. And then his mom comes back in his life. So at this point in his life, he's kind of in a lot of turmoil. He's back and forth. He goes to these orphanages that aren't very nice places where they are beaten and don't have anything. And any objects or personal items that they have are often taken from them. This was just kind of his story about how he managed not to lose hope and not to lose his faith in people and humanity. It was really great. Certainly teared up a little bit at it. The next book that I read was called Quietus by Tristan Palmgren. And this, I basically read it because it started with Q. And I'm doing a reading challenge where you have to read a book from every letter of the alphabet. You read a book starting with every letter of the alphabet, and this was my Q book. This was kind of an interdimensional book. The main character is an archaeologist who travels interdimensionally, and she's been placed in the era of the Black Plague, where she's not allowed to save anyone. She's just supposed to observe, and there's a plague going on in this other dimension, or by these other, basically like her people, or the people that she works for. They're experiencing a plague, and they're hoping that they can, based on what they learned from the Black Plague, it will help them fix their plague. And she kind of doesn't follow all the rules, we'll just say. It was okay. It was different. It was interesting. I don't know that the presentation of it was as good as it could have been, but it was alright. The fourth book that I finished was a memory called Empire by Arkady Martin. This is the first books in the Texacolon series. And it's a space opera about, well, there's this girl goes to this city, who's like, I guess it's like the main city of the empire. And she becomes the ambassador to her little station, and at their station, they preserve people's memories by implanting them. When they die, they implant them in other people. So she has the memories of the previous ambassador, but for some reason it's not working right. And the previous ambassador died under mysterious circumstances. So she's kind of trying to figure out like why he died, and maybe if her life's in danger. Again, it wasn't too bad. It was pretty good. Next I read The Bourne Identity by Robert Ludlum. This is kind of like a spy assassin novel. It's about a man who wakes up, he's riddled with bullets, he's pretty beat up, he doesn't remember anything about who he is, and he has a certain set of skills, and he's wondering what he would use that for, and he's trying to figure out who he is. It's kind of like two assassins, I guess they're kind of rivals, and it's really tied into who he is. And I'll have to say it was not near the same as the movie. I guess they had the same premise that somebody wakes up, doesn't know who they are, but they have a certain set of skills which would lead them to believe that this is probably what they do. I guess there were some similarities, but it is pretty different than the movie. Overall, I thought it was pretty good. I do enjoy spy movies on occasion, so I thought maybe I'll like the book, and it was pretty good. The next one that I read was Ahren, the 13th Paladin by Torsten Weitce. And this is a fantasy about, well, Ahren is the main character, and he finds out that he's special. And he finds out that he might be the 13th Paladin, which I guess there's 13 Paladins in this world. The 13th one was murdered before he could pass on his powers, and now years later, Ahren is risen, and they think, oh, he's come to take the place of the 13th Paladin so that we can finally defeat the great evil of the world. The book was okay. This was self-published, I think, because it had a lot of spelling errors and a lot of grammatical different things like that. Sometimes a paragraph would take up a whole page, or there were a lot of misspellings. There was times when the dialogue and everything didn't quite flow. It just seemed forced, and sometimes characters were brought in just to move something forward, but wasn't executed well. Overall, it was okay. I think hopefully the author has learned something and is going to do better in the next book. I'm not sure if I'll pick it up, or if I do, it probably won't be for a while. And the 7th book that I finished this week was The Crimson Vault by Will Weitce. And this is the second book in the Traveler's Gate series. It follows a group of individuals called Travelers, which means they can travel through dimensions, set in a fantasy era. And they each have kind of their own country or house or whatever, their own, that gives them their magical abilities. And every year in this world, there have to be sacrifices made to the blood trees to keep certain things imprisoned. And one of the main characters, Simon, decides that they came through and took a lot of his tribe to be sacrificed, or a lot of his townsmen to be sacrificed, and he went to save them, which means that the sacrifice didn't quite go as planned that year, and that now the world might be in trouble. So this one was really the consequences of some of his actions in the first book. I enjoyed it a lot. I'll be picking up the next one when I get a chance. So that was the 7th one that I finished. So now we'll get into the books that I'm currently reading. Currently, I'm reading Gone by Michael Grant. Just started it. This is about a world where they're in school actually, and suddenly all the adults disappear. So there's no adults. There's actually not really any teenagers. And there's nobody over 15. And they're starting to notice things are a little bit different, and some kids have some magical powers. Just started it. I'm just getting into that one. The next book that I'm reading, again, this is one I just started as well, and that is Grave Peril by Jim Butcher. And this is number 3 in the Dresden Files. And the Dresden Files are all connected, but each one has its own kind of story that goes in it. It's kind of like watching an episode of a series. And then I believe this one has to do with ghosts and the afterlife and stuff like that. I'm also still listening to The Wandering Inn, the third book in the series, Part 1, Flowers of Elysium by Pirateaba. Hoping to be finished with this one by the end of the month, but we'll see. It might not be done by next week. This is one I listen to with my kids, so I don't have as much time to read it. And the last one that I just picked up was The Son of Oak by David Farland. This is the fourth one in the Rune Lord series. And this takes place several years later after the last book. And we're just kind of continuing on in the world. So those are the ones that I'm currently reading. Are some that I'm going to pick up next. And I guess we'll just kind of see. I'll just kind of see how close I get to the end of the month. How likely it is I'm going to pick these up. The books I'm going to pick up next, after I finish Gone, I'll pick up Legend by David Gemmel. And this is the first book in the Drenari saga. This is a fantasy. I think it's a little bit older one. There's like 12, 13 books in the series, but they look pretty small. It doesn't look like it'll take long to get through that. After I finish Grave Peril, I'll pick up Mind of My Mind by Octavia Butler. And this is the second book in the Pattern Mastering series. So I'm excited for that one. And then, kind of depending on whether or not I finish the fourth Rune Lords, I'll probably pick up Little Darlings by Melanie Golding. And I don't know what this is about. I think it's a horror. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'll pick it up and I'll find out. So anyway, that's my wrap up for today. Those are all the books that I'm currently reading, the ones I'm going to pick up next, and the ones that I finished this week. So thanks everybody for watching. Right now I'm posting new videos Monday through Thursday, and I'm hoping to be able to keep that up. Alright, thanks for joining me. And eat cupcakes.